The way we all buy and sell homes in the United States is going to change for the first time in decades, and not because home prices or mortgage rates are coming down. The changes are likely coming this summer because of a massive shift in the way we pay real estate commissions.
Hey guys, I'm Hannah Cox with BASEDPolitics, and you're watching my show, Hannah Explains It All, where every week I help you understand the major public policy decisions happening that are governing your life. If you like this show, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel. Little personal news quickly. I know many people have left comments saying I've been MIA. As I said last week, I had a Facebook hacking attempt that shut down my life for a week, and then this week I got engaged. So it's been a busy 2 weeks over here. I do apologize for the break in scheduling, but we are back at it, back to our regular scheduled programming, so stay tuned. Histrionics will be back tomorrow as well. In case you haven't heard, there has been a major disruption to the housing industry over the past couple of weeks, and I think based on virtually every other option on the table, this decision might be the thing that actually reduces home prices in the very near future. If you haven't been paying attention, the government, and particularly Democrats within it, spend a lot of time talking about monopolies and monopolistic practices. The FTC is currently governed by a woman named Lena Khan, who mostly just hates business, hates the free market, hates capitalism in general, but she does all of this under the guise of trying to protect competition. She regularly goes around and sues companies for being monopolies or having unfair labor practices. But ironically enough, none of the companies she's actually sued over the past couple of years have been monopolies at all. And she's been losing hand over fist in court because it turns out none of them are doing anti-competitive practices either. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I've been calling antitrust and the FTC and this whole notion that the government needs to protect competition mostly a Trojan horse for some time. And that's because in a truly capitalist system, you don't need the government to come in and protect competition. It just occurs naturally. The only way companies or organizations get and maintain monopolistic power is because of the government backing them. Otherwise, you would see competitors enter the market and take them down. This is just the nature of how industries work. If you see somebody making a good bit of money doing something, you are inclined to come in and compete with them, to try to innovate, to offer things at a lower price. All of these things can happen organically without the government. And again, when we see the government get involved, it's usually against companies that aren't actually monopolies. Meanwhile, the real monopolies out there are the ones they're propping up. And one of those monopolies is something called the National Association of Realtors, which we'll call NAR for short today. Now, the National Association of Realtors is massive. They have over 1 million members. They have so much control over the real estate market and the housing market, it's not even funny. Not only are the vast majority of realtors members of this association, they also have a PAC where they spend a ton of money lobbying both Democrats and Republicans to get the policies they prefer in place. They also own what are called the MLS services, where people have to list houses as they come onto a market. And they even have ownership in things like lockbox companies and DocuSign, tools that you have to use in the process of viewing and buying a house. It's wild. Now, as you might have guessed, the NAR has been doing some very corrupt anti-competitive practices that have been affecting everybody in the housing market for decades. But was it the government that came in and put a stop to these practices? No. Instead, it was a little-known lawyer out of Missouri named Michael Ketchmark and a couple of individuals who sold their houses and got scammed by the NAR and decided to take action in a civil action lawsuit. Now, this was truly a David and Goliath moment. Because not only does the NAR have a ton of members and a ton of money, they also have a ton of lawyers that have been very effective at stomping out any challenges to their power over the past couple of decades. Nearly 9 out of 10 home sales are handled by real estate agents that are affiliated with the NAR. And because of that kind of control, they have been able to set rules that have controlled how much buyers and sellers pay to their various agents and how you work with those agents in order to get a home on the market. And this is no small drop in the bucket. For the record, Americans spend about $100 billion a year on real estate commissions alone. And because of this new ruling about how they manage these kinds of rules and payments, economists actually forecast that they're probably going to see that number drop by $20 to $50 billion over the next couple of years because the commissions are going to go down. Now, keep in mind that while sellers have predominantly been the ones to actually pay those commissions, the price does get baked into the ultimate price of a home. That means sellers typically pass on those costs to buyers in the form of higher home prices. Now, the housing market is 20% of US GDP, so this is likely to have a catastrophic fallout. What I think is so interesting, though, is that the NAR has been super monopolistic and has been setting really unfair practices when it comes to these negotiations for some time, but they have mostly flown under the radar. which I just think is fascinating because you will hear politicians, especially those on the left, going after groups like the NRA ad nauseum. But the NRA is 1, not effective, 2, not even good at defending gun rights, and 3, ultimately has very little impact in your day-to-day life. Meanwhile, the NAR has had a massive impact on the cost of living. They actually are extremely effective. And they have one of the largest PACs in DC. So my only bet is that because both Democrats and Republicans were getting a windfall from them, they didn't go after them in any meaningful way. And because of that, this group has been able to keep an absolute stranglehold on real estate for decades. And they've been able to keep that stranglehold even as technology has been rapidly advancing that can and should make it far easier and cheaper to find and buy and sell houses. Think about back in the day when you had to go to a travel agent to book a flight. Just a couple of decades ago, it would have cost you several $1,000s to fly economy from New York City to London. Nowadays, you can get that route out of New York for about $500. And that's in large part because travel agents have been boxed out of the market. We simply do not need them anymore, or if you want one, it's a luxury service you have to be willing to pay extra for. Instead, you can go to websites like Expedia or even directly to the airlines and book your flight. That is the same sort of thing you should be seeing happening in real estate right now as it becomes so much easier to shop for homes online, for sellers to get their homes in front of people without a real estate agent, as automation and things like AI have made it easier to process deals, to read contracts, and as it's also become easier for you to do your own work in finding things like an inspector, a loan agent. The whole process should be changing and making it simpler and cheaper for you, but because the NAR has been in the way and because it's had a monopoly on the real estate market, those things have not transpired. But now, thanks to this lawsuit, they're about to. Up until now, the fee to sell your home has been about 5.5% to 6%. Typically, when you'd have a home go on a market, you would have a seller's agent that represents the seller, and then you have a buyer's agent that's trying to bring buyers to the home who might be a good match. Now, historically, you as a seller have had to pay that entire 5.5% to 6% of your selling costs to both of the two agents, meaning you're having to pay the cost for your real estate agent and also the buyers. And you really didn't have any ability to negotiate that or get out of having to pay this fee, because what would happen is the real estate agents would go onto the MLS services, which are, again, where people are listing the homes that are for sale and that are, again, owned by the NAR, and they would negotiate with one another behind the scenes. And they would basically say, hey, I'm the seller's agent. I will give you half of my fee, which will be 3% if you bring me a client to buy the house. And if you weren't to offer at least that 3%, then most of the buyer's agents were not going to bring their clients to your homes. They weren't even going to show it to the consumer because they wanted to get a higher fee. So basically, these two sides conspired together to price fix. There was nothing legally mandating that 5.5% to 6% fee, but sellers were being told they had to pay it. And this is what happened to the three plaintiffs that ultimately brought this lawsuit that took down the NAR. According to reporting from Vox, the National Association of Realtors, the trade group representing the industry, agreed to cough up $418 million as part of an antitrust lawsuit alleging that the group had artificially inflated realtor commissions that home sellers pay, which in turn helped inflate home prices. Until now, home sellers paid about 6% of the sale price toward a fee that would be split between their own agent and the buyer's agent. Experts are divided on exactly how much impact this will have on home buyers, who will now likely have to start paying their agents themselves. The median sale price of homes as of late 2023 was about $417,700. 6% of that amounts to a little over $25,000.
No buyer would ever voluntarily agree to pay this massive commission. It's not worth it. So it's game over for the realtors if buyers are forced to pay their own broker's commission. The only reason this system works is because the seller is forced to pay for it.
Yep. And I do expect that much of what is charged on a commission basis, on a percent of home value today, will change to being a fixed fee and a flat fee basis.
5K, 10K for your buyer's agent.
Different services. So you can have someone do
a la carte.
Do the disclosure diligence for me for 5K. Negotiate the purchase for me for 10K. And you as a consumer will start to pick from a menu of the services that you want to have rendered for you and things that you're comfortable doing yourself. I don't need someone to negotiate price. I don't need someone to find me a home. I've got Redfin. I can go do that. I can arrange open houses on my own. The lockbox is there. I'll go walk around the property. I don't need someone to point out that the color is nice in a room. And so I think that there's elements of what will happen here, which is a fragmentation and then an automation of these services. And as a result, significant fee reduction.
This is something that I find absolutely infuriating. Again, I, as a consumer, am now able to do the vast majority of research and work around buying a house that I need to do. I don't really need a real estate agent to help me along that much in the process. And if I want to do that, that's fine, but it should be a flat fee or something that I know I'm getting into on the front end. As a seller, when I go to sell my home, I think it's very corrupt that I basically have to pay for the buyer's agent to show them the home as well as my own agent to sell it when I could just as easily list it online myself were it not for all this gatekeeping going on thanks to NAR. When you think about having to give up 6% of your largest investment to people who are doing very little work for you, it's honestly super corrupt. People have to scrimp and save and really work to buy their first homes, and then they should be able to enjoy the proceeds when they start to get equity in that and sell it one day. Again, if they do need help in the process, they should be able to opt into that, but this current system was definitely monopolistic, and again, they were misleading people and making them think they didn't even have an option to negotiate that 5.5% to 6%. Sellers were basically told you absolutely had to do this or you wouldn't be able to get people to look at your home. Selling agents wouldn't even work with you. Oftentimes on the paperwork, they weren't even disclosing to people that they could opt into a lower rate. It's kind of like when you go to tip at a restaurant and instead of giving you a full array of tipping options, their machine says 20%, 25%, 30%, as if those are your only options. They're betting on people clicking one of those and moving along. And that's exactly what happened to the plaintiffs in this case. Now, the David in this picture won an unlikely battle against Goliath, even though they were up against a lot more money, very powerful attorneys. It turns out the jury agreed with their arguments and they won their verdict. After they won that case, Michael Kirchbach, the lawyer involved here, immediately turned around and sued again on the very same premise at the national level. That led to a windfall of other lawsuits, and eventually the NAR agreed to settle. So if you are a home seller who sold your house for 6% over the past couple of years and were unaware that you had a choice in the matter, you will actually be a part of this class action lawsuit that's coming down the pipelines. But even if you are not in that group, you are still likely to be impacted by this lawsuit. Let's look at some of the ways this could end up playing out. So this lawsuit had numerous components to it that the NAR basically agreed to change their rules and practices as part of the settlement. And one of those is that sellers can't advertise buyer agents' commissions on the multiple listing services or MLSs anymore. What that means is a buyer's agent that's working with somebody who's interested in buying a home would no longer know what kind of fee they're going to get if they sold the home. That means they no longer have an incentive to show their clients only some houses. But it also means that the seller is no longer going to pay for you to have a real estate agent, which I think makes sense. Why should the seller have to pay for your real estate agent when they're providing a service to you? They're negotiating on your behalf. I, as a seller, shouldn't have to pay for somebody to represent someone against me in a negotiation. It's crazy. Ultimately, what you're likely to see is buyers negotiating commissions up front with people who are interested in working with them and probably signing people exclusively when they begin the process. On top of that, you're probably likely to see new ways of compensating buyers emerge. And I think that's really exciting because this is an industry that should be rapidly innovating thanks to all the technological advancements we're seeing. It should be getting easier to go through this process. It should be getting cheaper to go through this process. And that hasn't been happening thanks to the presence of the NAR and their corrupt practices. Now I think it's likely that we'll see many new ways of doing things emerge. You could see more flat fee services. You could see people negotiating a percentage of a purchase. You could see real estate agents beginning to compete on commissions so that consumers can shop around for the best deal. Brokers could begin advertising their fees up front. All of this means that you're going to have a lot more power to negotiate, a lot more options, and a lot more transparency throughout the entire process of purchasing a home. And it's worth knowing that as of right now, America's fees are far higher than the rest of the world's. In Israel, Singapore, and the UK, brokers charge between 1% to 2% for the same thing that agents were charging 5.5%, 6%, or even more for here in the US. And again, all of that has been baked into our housing prices. It's also made sellers less likely to sell. I know that's a calculation I've even made in recent months when I think about the house I'm currently in, because I'm trying to see how much it has appreciated and how much I'm going to have to pay out of that money in closing costs and realtor fees if I were to sell. If you make it cheaper and easier for people to sell, then we're likely to let go of entry-level homes, move up to larger homes, and therefore you have more options for people who are just trying to get their foot in the door in the market. Ultimately, sellers and buyers are both going to win in this picture, but I will acknowledge the fact that this is probably going to lead to many real estate agents being pushed out of the field.
The real estate industry is going to change forever starting in July. What is already a business where 80% of agents fail is probably going to increase and get significantly harder. Of all the agents that are licensed right now, I would expect probably half will drop out of the business within a year and a half. With sellers no longer being required to pay the buyer's agent, you are going to see a lot of people who are in the business for short-term gains drop out immediately. Because if a house was listed for $1 million, previously the seller was going to pay 2 or 3% of the purchase price to the buyer's agent, and that is no longer going to happen. So every single agent who is just there to open doors and answer phone calls, not do any negotiations, they are going to find it extremely difficult to be successful in this business, and they will absolutely be dropping out. But the agents who still provide value, have a large client base, will probably continue to thrive.
I think his take is absolutely correct. Currently, there probably just simply are too many real estate agents in this country. This is something I've noticed even anecdotally a lot of people do as a last resort when they don't like their job. There's a lot of people who get into this because they think it's a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not. That being said, there are also really good real estate agents who are very knowledgeable, who take a lot of care and time with their clients, who really are looking out for their best interest. Those kinds of real estate agents are going to be fine. They already have a client base that trusts them, that knows they're reliable. I don't think they're going anywhere. But those who are not dedicated as much time or not providing as good of a service probably will get pushed out. And I'm sorry, I just don't feel sorry for that. You should have to earn your keep. If you can't actually compete, you're probably not good at this job and should seek other employment. What you shouldn't do is be bad at your job and then use a monopoly to price fix as an excuse to keep operating within it. And I spend a good bit of time watching platforms like TikTok. It makes me actually sick to see the number of people who had really crappy real estate agents come on and talk about the problems that they're facing.
My mortgage went up $1,000 and I am not okay. So let me tell you guys, for the longest time, people be screaming from the hilltop, home ownership is not it. Like, don't rush. And I will just be like, I don't understand it because I'm literally chilling, like cheaper than rent. I was bamboozled. So let me tell y'all what they do not tell y'all about real estate. So they do an analysis every year from, at least with the mortgage that I got, right? And so they did an analysis and basically my mortgage increased by $1,000. And I asked them why. And they were like, something about my house is a new build. And so I guess they charged me for the taxes when it was just the land for 2 years. Then after year 2, they add the taxes with the house actually on it. And they were like, yeah, your builder is supposed to tell you. They didn't. They didn't. And so I asked them, can I sell the house? And they were like, there's no equity in it. You guys see me smiling, but come next month, I'm literally going to be in tears because $1,000 extra a month, I legit want to move back home and live with my parents. But I don't have that option. I'm sick. Like, I'm sick. Honestly, don't buy a house if you're single. Like, buy a house when there's 2 incomes coming in because, baby, you gonna need it.
So something that I want to go over is just how worthless most realtors are. Honestly, most loan officers are pretty worthless too. Someday this will be an automated thing. You won't have to put up with people like me or realtors, but gosh, terrible. Okay, so why do I say that? I have a guy, a good friend of mine, did a loan for him a couple of years ago, hit me up just today, and he's like, hey bro, I'm putting an offer on this property. Here's the contract. Do you think I can be approved? First, he's just like jumping the gun, right? I'm like, oh, okay, you put an offer in? And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, let's try to get you approved, get him approved. And then he tells me, hey, look at the offer. I look at the offer and he's not getting any incentives for buying this house. The property's been sitting on the market for 4 months. No incentives at all. So I tell him to do this. All right, so he sends me the offer and I'm like, hey, what does your agent, can you even see that? What does your agent think about asking for them to cover your closing costs? I say on almost every offer right now, sellers are covering 100% of the closing costs, at least 3 to 4%. So we asked them that. And he's like, should I ask for that? I'm like, yeah, man, it's going to save you like 15 to 20 grand. So he's like, okay, let me ask him. So he asked the realtor and the realtor was like, sure, I mean, but you might miss out on the offer. And there's no other offers. Like nobody else is putting an offer on this place. So then he's like, hey, if they say basically they're telling him like, I don't think it's a good idea. And I'm like, tell them you're going to use a different realtor then. And so finally they acquiesce. They tell him, yeah, we'll put that in the contract, and then I tell him not to sign anything until he sees that. And bam, here it is in the offer, and it was accepted. So what is the point of an agent if they're not there to save you as much money as possible? Like, I can get screwed myself. I can walk in and pay Mac top dollar for everything, no problem. If I have to go in and overpay, I'm really good at that. But the agent's supposed to make it so that doesn't happen. So he's getting $16,800 back right now. Agent never thought to tell him any of that. Truly, 99% of agents worthless. All the agents I work with, I've filtered out over years of time to demonstrate two things. One, they're awesome at their job. They understand things about houses that I don't understand. They almost always have a background in property flipping, so they know if there's going to be issues with the house, further on. And two, they're no pressure. They don't care if it takes you a year to find the perfect home. They want to make sure you're happy with it. They want to make sure you get a great deal. There's not a lot of those agents, unfortunately.
Real estate agents are going to go out of business after this NAR settlement has officially hit, and I've gotten so many people asking me to comment on this, so I figured I'd make a quick video. And all the common understanding is that real estate industry is about to change forever. It's never going to be the same. Realtors are going to go out of business, etc., right? Here are my thoughts on it. I believe this is a phenomenal thing for the industry. And I used to be a real estate agent. I'm retired now, thank God. This is why we own assets. We don't broker deals for the rest of our lives because you can't control your income. And yeah, that being said, here's where things are going to happen. I think this is going to be phenomenal because it's going to clean up the industry. If you know me longer, if you know that I hate real estate agents because 80% are lazy, inconsistent, unreliable, uneducated, and they're a thorn on my side when I'm trying to make money because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to handle their clients, educate their people, and see a deal through, make sure there's not going to be any issues, etc., right? So what this NAR settlement is going to do is all those agents that have been making money, just pure luck, just being in the right place, the right industry, or how, their friend wants to buy a house, they're gone. They're gone now, right? So it's going to clean up the industry. I think it's going to only let great agents are going to continue to make even more money. And I think bad agents are going to lose at a faster rate. So overall, I'm super, super excited. And as a real estate investor, I just saved, as far as I'm concerned, I just saved so much damn money because I'm sick and tired of paying a buyer's agent 2.5% to be a thorn on my side and negotiate against me. I'm like, excuse me, if I'm paying you, I want you to go to your client and you tell them they need to pay more for this house, not less for this house. And yeah, that's it. And also, you know how annoying it is to negotiate with a third party and that third party has no idea how to actually communicate my message to their client? Now, I can talk to the client directly. So I'm very happy. I got no beef with it. I think agents will be fine overall. And I think this is a phenomenal move for the industry. If you're a real estate agent, you should be happy about this. And you should look forward to your competition absolutely disappearing overnight. So congrats.
It is inexcusable that this is happening to people, but this is what happens when you have people who are just mostly trying to make a sell and trying to get the highest price at that sell so they can make a higher commission off of it. Real estate agents need to actually be providing a quality service. They need to be fully informing people of what they're getting into, and they certainly should not be trying to sell people into mortgages they cannot ultimately afford long-term. This is how we got the housing bubble in 2008 to begin with. So sorry, I'm not crying any tears for this industry. Like I said, I think there are many good people operating within it. I think they will be just fine. But I also think there's a lot of grifters that have been in this space that should get pushed out and that consumers should not have to fool with anymore.
I know why the general public and everyone on TikTok that's not a realtor hates realtors. I want to tell you why. I'll tell you this story about something that happened with my husband the other day. And I was like, oh, this is why people realtors and why they think we're so is representing a buyer in a multiple offer situation. And essentially they wrote an offer. It was reached out to by not only the agent, but the seller's lender who's helping them get a mortgage for their new property that they're going to buy once they sell this property. And so basically trying to strong arm my husband and every other realtor who had put an offer on this house by saying, hey, your buyer's offer will be viewed as stronger if they actually use me as their lender. They continued on to be like the dollar amount or higher, literally said the dollar amount, which is illegal to do. And then also saying that they should totally waive all inspections. My husband, being the ethical really good real estate agent that he is, he does a lot of business. He just 40 to 50 homes a year on his own. Was like, that is totally unethical and so unprofessional, like the way that you are coming at me. It wasn't even that they were like, you know, what we could do to like make our offer stronger, but literally trying to be like, well, if you don't waive these inspections and go with me as a lender, then you can just like kiss it goodbye because your offer is not going to get accepted for your. So I get it. I get why people think we're so because there's a lot of realtors out there that are fucking shitty.
This is one of my biggest issues with public policy is when you see groups like this that get propped up for decades, because it's not without the government's backing that they were able to keep doing this kind of thing. They were lobbying, they were spending big PAC money, and because of that, they were getting a very cushy regulatory apparatus that was blocking their competition, that was stagnating things, that was preventing innovation and technology from moving ahead for consumers. And that is what you will always see when the government tends to get in bed with a company or an industry and back it up. This is not capitalism. That's not what's been going on in the real estate agency world for many, many years. And I'm glad to see we finally actually will see some competition. Ultimately, consumers always benefit when there is more breathing room in a market, and I think that's what we're about to see now. So good riddance to the people who have been using these kinds of policies and regulations to prop themselves up at the expense of the actual consumers, and I'm very, very excited to see where this takes our housing market in the next couple of years. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and until then, I'll see you next week. If you like this video, don't forget to check out others in my series, Hannah Explains It All, here, and you can watch my other weekly show, Histrionics, on women's issues here.